they're not as ambitious, quite frankly, and they're not trepidatious at all. I just don't think they necessarily want to reach for that brass ring.
You will not believe what Vince McMahon did to some of the most talented wrestlers in WWE history. Wrestling has given us so many amazing stars over the many years. Some of them became legends because they got the right chance at the right time, but others had that chance taken away from them, no matter how much the fans loved them. Reports over the years have painted a picture of a WWE creative team that operated under fear and constant pressure. Writers reportedly followed strict rules, including standing whenever Vince McMahon walked into a room and only sitting once he had taken his seat. Scripts were reportedly torn up and rewritten at the very last minute, sometimes even while a show was already on the air. Wrestlers were often expected to say their promos exactly as written, with almost no room to add their own personality, and even small changes to a script reportedly needed direct approval before they could be used on live television. A lawsuit filed by a former WWE writer also raised serious concerns about how storylines were sometimes pitched inside the writer's room, describing an environment where staff who pushed back against troubling ideas faced real career consequences for speaking up. All of this created a workplace where creative risk-taking was rare, and where staying safe often mattered more than telling the best possible story. Staff reportedly followed rigid dress codes as part of this same culture, and even small deviations from an approved script needed direct sign-off before a performer could safely make the change on camera. If you enjoy deep dives into wrestling history like this one, hit that subscribe button right now and join us for more stories from behind the curtain, because this next part gets very interesting. Under this kind of pressure, some of the most gifted performers in the business were changed, silenced, or pushed aside. This is not a story about bad luck. It is a story about choices made at the very top of WWE. A big part of this story also comes down to a quiet rivalry inside the company itself. For years, the developmental brand called NXT was run by Paul Levesque, also known as Triple H, and it built a real reputation for careful storytelling and respect for in-ring skill. Reports say that Vince McMahon and some senior executives grew frustrated with all the praise NXT was receiving from fans and critics. Rather than treating it as an equal part of the company, NXT was reportedly seen as a small training ground that did not deserve real respect. When popular NXT stars were promoted to the main roster, many of them found themselves in a system that seemed to reject the very things that had made them special in the first place. Their old character work, their fan connections, and their years of growth were often treated as if none of it had ever happened at all. Today, we look back at 10 wrestlers who had everything it took to be huge stars, and how creative decisions held them back. Some of these stars found new life outside WWE. Some came back stronger than ever before. Let's start the countdown from number 10 and work our way down to the most heartbreaking case of them all. Number 10 on our list is Keith Lee. Keith Lee was not your normal big man. Fans online spent months trying to understand why WWE would throw away all the goodwill that Keith Lee had built in NXT. Wrestling fans are usually happy to accept a new name or a new look, as long as the character still feels connected to the wrestler underneath it. In Lee's case, almost nothing carried over. The problem was never his size, his athleticism, or his work ethic. Reports consistently point to one simple issue, which was that his natural way of speaking did not match what leadership expected from a wrestler of his size and build. He weighed well over 300 pounds, yet he could fly around the ring like a much smaller wrestler. He mixed power moves with high-flying moves that fans had never seen from someone his size before. A combination that made every single one of his matches feel like a genuine spectacle worth watching from bell to bell. On top of that, Keith Lee had a smart and thoughtful way of talking on the microphone. He did not sound like the usual growling tough guy that fans were used to seeing in that role. He sounded like a smart, well-spoken athlete who respected the business and the people watching at home. In NXT, this mix of skill and personality made him a double champion, holding more than one title at the same time, a distinction that placed him among a very small group of performers to ever achieve that feat on that particular brand. He even had big matches against stars like Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns that made people believe he was headed for the very top of the entire company. Then Keith Lee moved up to the main roster, and everything changed almost overnight. Reports say Vince McMahon did not like how Lee spoke on camera. McMahon reportedly told him directly that he sounded too smart for his own good. After Lee fought through a serious and frightening bout of COVID-19 and returned to television, WWE gave him a brand new name, instead of building on what fans already loved. He became known as Bearcat Keith Lee. Lee tried to build a real and respectful story behind this new name by honoring a legendary black wrestler from the past named Bearcat Wright, hoping the tribute would give the new character some real meaning and depth for fans to connect with. But WWE Creative reportedly did not support this idea or help him build it out. Instead, they took away the parts of Lee that fans already loved the most. His entrance music was changed. His gear became plain and simple. His signature double chop move was banned from television. He was even told not to interact with the crowd during his entrance. All of this left fans confused about who this new character even was supposed to be. Many fans and observers later described this whole approach as more of a compliance test than a real attempt to build a character, as if the goal was simply to see how much Lee would accept, rather than to grow something new and exciting together. Think about that for a moment. A wrestler who was already a double champion, already popular, and already respected by fans and fellow performers alike, was handed a brand new name, a plain new look, and a list of things he was no longer allowed to do. Nobody asked whether the fans wanted this change. Nobody explained to the audience why a beloved star suddenly looked and sounded so different. The confusion that followed was not an accident. It was the natural result of tearing down something that was already working. Keith Lee was released from WWE in November 2021, with his true potential never fully used by the company. But his story did not end there. He moved on to All Elite Wrestling, where he was finally able to show fans his real talent again on a bigger stage. Even after facing some serious health struggles along the way, Keith Lee proved that his ability was never the problem. The only problem was that WWE never truly let him be himself. Watching him thrive again on a different stage, using his real name, his real style, and his real voice, only made it clearer how unnecessary the entire Bearcat experiment had been in the first place. Number 9 on our list is Wade Barrett. In 2010, Wade Barrett led a group of NXT rookies called the Nexus, a faction built entirely from the very first graduating class of the NXT competition series. Their shocking debut on live television changed the wrestling world overnight. They stormed the ring, destroyed the set, and made Wade Barrett look like a true main event threat in a matter of minutes. Fans could feel that something special and dangerous was building around this new group of rookies. At SummerSlam that year, Barrett and his group faced a huge 7-man team that included John Cena himself. Behind the scenes, respected veterans like Chris Jericho and Edge reportedly pushed hard for Barrett to win this match, believing it would set him up as a true main event star for years to come, a level of backstage support that very few rookies ever received so early in their careers. Instead, John Cena took a hard bump onto the exposed concrete floor, got back up almost instantly, and beat both Barrett and his partner by himself in the ring. This one moment reportedly took the fire out of the entire group and hurt Barrett's climb to the top of the card, ending a winning streak that had made the Nexus feel genuinely unbeatable in the weeks before SummerSlam. Cena himself later admitted this ending was a mistake that hurt the younger stars involved, and another wrestler who was part of the group has since said that this one finish helped kill the momentum of every single person who had been part of it. Years later, Barrett found a clever way back into the spotlight with a character called Bad News Barrett. He stood on a small podium and delivered gloomy news to the crowd, always finishing with his catchphrase about having some bad news to share. A bit that started almost as a joke segment on a smaller show before growing into a genuine fan favorite moment on the main roster. Fans absolutely loved it, and they cheered him, even though he was supposed to be playing a bad guy on television. Instead of allowing this natural connection with the crowd to keep growing, reports say Vince McMahon disliked the fact that a heel character was getting cheered so loudly by the audience, even though that same crowd reaction is often exactly what companies spend years trying to build. Barrett was reportedly told to stop using his popular catchphrase altogether. Without it, the character quickly lost its spark and its energy. He was placed into a generic King of the Ring storyline that did not use his real talent or his natural charisma at all, leaving fans wondering what could have been if the company had simply trusted him. The fun and energy that once surrounded him slowly faded away, and Barrett eventually moved from full-time wrestling into commentary, worn down by years of creative frustration and missed chances. It is worth pausing here to think about how rare it is for a heel character to earn real cheers from the crowd. That kind of organic connection cannot be manufactured by a writer sitting in an office. Fans decide who they love, and in Wade Barrett's case, they had clearly decided. Instead of trusting that decision, the company reportedly chose control over chemistry, and a performer who once led a faction that changed WWE television overnight was left with a legacy defined more by what could have been than by what actually happened. It is also worth remembering just how rare it is for any new group of wrestlers to feel as dangerous and unpredictable as the Nexus did in that first debut. That kind of impact usually only comes around once in a great while, and when a company gets a moment like that, protecting it should be one of the highest priorities in the entire building. Number 8 on our list is Zack Ryder. He launched his own YouTube series, Z True Long Island Story, successfully building a massive, highly dedicated fan base entirely on his own, one video at a time, without any real backing from the company itself. Long before wrestlers were expected to build their own audience online, Zack Ryder was already doing exactly that on his own time. Years before social media marketing became a normal part of every performer's job, fans began chanting his name during matches that had nothing to do with him, showing just how much his popularity had grown. His popularity grew so large that WWE could not ignore it any longer, and he was finally given the United States Championship as a result of the fan demand, a rare case of a company visibly reacting to what an audience was asking for out loud. It felt like a true grassroots success story built from nothing, complete with a famous photo alongside fellow champions CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, that fans still talk about today. Reports suggest that instead of building on this success, Vince McMahon and WWE Creative saw Ryder's self-made popularity as a problem, rather than something worth celebrating. In 2012, Ryder's character was torn down in a shocking way on live television, following months of steady momentum that had made him one of the most talked-about names in the entire company. He was pushed off a stage in a wheelchair by a much larger opponent. He was shown as weak and easily fooled, while a top star kissed his on-screen love interest right in front of him. A fellow wrestler named Kurt Hawkins later said this treatment broke the spirit of the entire locker room, because it showed everyone that getting popular on your own terms could get you punished instead of rewarded by the company, a lesson that reportedly stuck with many performers for years afterward. Ryder spent years afterward in smaller roles before he was eventually released in 2020, but just like others on this list, he refused to give up on himself. He reinvented himself on the independent wrestling scene as Matt Cardona, and won major championships there, proving his talent had never faded even a little. He eventually returned to WWE years later, showing that his connection with the fans was always real, even when the company itself did not seem to believe in it. Even after his big return, reports say he still faced pressure backstage from people who wanted to push him back toward his old low-level jobber role, instead of respecting everything he had built for himself on the independent scene. Zack Ryder's story is a reminder that being punished for success is one of the strangest things that can happen in any workplace, let alone a television company built entirely around entertaining an audience. He did the hard work of building an audience from nothing, using tools that many performers were still afraid to try, and instead of being rewarded with real trust, he was made an example of. That is a hard lesson for any hardworking performer to learn on live television, in front of millions of people. It also sent a clear message to every other wrestler in that locker room watching from the sidelines. Building your own audience, taking initiative, and finding creative ways to stand out could apparently cost you more than it rewarded you, and that kind of message tends to stick with an entire roster for a very long time afterward. Number 7 on our list is Cesaro. Wrestlers across the entire industry respected Cesaro as one of the most skilled in-ring technicians of his entire generation, someone who other performers often pointed to backstage as a wrestler they personally learned from. He could combine raw power with technical precision in a way that very few athletes in the world could ever match. Fans in arenas would organize entire sections of the crowd just to cheer for him, a movement that became known as the Cesaro section, complete with signs and matching chants that grew louder with every appearance he made on the show. Despite this deep respect from his peers and this massive fan support, Cesaro's push to a true main event singles spot was reportedly held back again and again over the years. In an interview in December 2014, Vince McMahon publicly questioned whether Cesaro truly connected with the audience, and even wondered aloud if his nationality was the reason he had not become a bigger star yet, comments that stunned many fans who had watched Cesaro headline shows around the world with ease. Cesaro was reportedly very upset by these public comments. He is said to have confronted McMahon directly in his office, and later delivered a promo on live television, defending his love for wrestling itself, rather than flashy talk or gimmicks. A rare and bold moment of a performer speaking honestly through the character he had been given. Despite standing up for himself in this way, Cesaro was mostly kept in tag team roles, or used to make other rising stars look strong, rather than being given a true chance as a top single star of his own, even as his popularity with fans continued to grow year after year. He did form a well-liked tag team called the Brass Ring Club with his partner Tyson Kidd, which gave him a fresh spark for a while, but even that success did not lead to a lasting singles push. In one famous incident at SummerSlam, while Cesaro was working a physical tag match, fans in the crowd started playing with a beach ball during the match. Cesaro reportedly left the action to destroy the ball himself, frustrated that his hard work was being treated so casually. He left WWE in February 2022, after years of this treatment. Almost immediately after arriving in All Elite Wrestling, his true skill was finally placed front and center, and he became a major championship contender within a respected wrestling faction. His story shows that sometimes the very best wrestlers are the ones a company understands the least. Think about what it means when the strongest technical wrestler of his generation, someone respected by literally every peer in the locker room, still could not earn a real singles push at the very top. The so-called brass ring that WWE always talked about giving to hard-working performers turned out, in Cesaro's case, to be more of an idea than a promise. His years of dedication were used mostly to elevate other stars, rather than to build his own legacy, and it took leaving the company entirely for the rest of the wrestling world to finally see him treated the way his talent always deserved. Watching Cesaro finally step into main event spotlights after leaving WWE only made the years of being held back feel even more difficult to understand, since it proved beyond any doubt that the ability had been there the entire time, waiting for someone willing to trust it. Number 6 on our list is EC3. EC3 arrived in WWE with a look, an attitude, and a sharp tongue that seemed perfect for a classic arrogant villain character, the exact kind of confident heel that had drawn huge reactions from crowds for decades. He had already proven himself as a main event world champion in another promotion, and had also completed a strong and respected run in NXT before joining the main roster, arriving with more experience and polish than many performers ever get the chance to build. His greatest strength was reportedly his ability to cut a promo, using clever and cutting words to make the crowd truly dislike him in the best possible way. Reports say that after just a single promo on the main roster, Vince McMahon decided that EC3 sounded like a weatherman and ordered that he stop speaking on television altogether from that point on. For a performer whose entire character was built around talking to the crowd, this decision was completely devastating to his momentum, since almost every prior success in his career had come from his ability to hold a microphone and command a room full of people. EC3 was then placed into a strange storyline against a departing star named Dean Ambrose, where he was originally expected to win the match quickly and cleanly, a plan that ignored just how connected fans still felt to the departing veteran. When the crowd reacted badly to this planned result during the show, the roles were reportedly swapped on the fly, without much explanation given to the fans watching at home, leaving the entire segment feeling confusing and disjointed to anyone tuning in that night. From there, EC3 was pushed into a silent, comedic role chasing a joke championship, far from the main event star he once looked destined to become just a short time earlier. He appeared visibly unhappy on camera during this stretch of his career, and it was clear to fans that his true talent was being completely wasted by the company, week after week. His time in WWE ended with his momentum totally gone, a sad result for someone who had shown so much promise just a short time before arriving. It is hard to imagine a more direct way to hurt a performer than to take away the exact skill that made him special in the first place. EC3 did not lose a step in the ring. He did not lose his look or his attitude. He simply lost the one tool that had built his entire career up to that point, and once that tool was gone, so was any real chance of the company using him the way his talent clearly deserved. There is a certain cruelty to that kind of decision that stands out even among the other stories on this list, because it did not slowly wear a character down over months. It happened almost instantly, after a single promo, and the character never really recovered from that moment. Number 5 on our list is Aleister Black. In NXT, Aleister Black built one of the most detailed and eerie characters seen in modern wrestling, blending striking martial arts with a spooky, almost theatrical presentation that felt unlike anything else on the roster. He was presented as a dark, mysterious martial artist with a heavy metal-style entrance that fans absolutely loved from the very start, and he even carried championship gold during a run that critics praised for its careful pacing and detail. Every part of his presentation felt carefully thought out and deliberate, right down to the smallest detail. When he arrived on the main roster, reports say Vince McMahon struggled to fully understand this style of character and what made it work. Instead of embracing the mysterious tone that Black had carefully built in NXT, McMahon reportedly imagined him as an old-fashioned vampire character, similar to a classic horror film monster from decades earlier, a completely different tone from the modern, grounded style Black had spent years developing for himself. A loud creaking door sound effect was added to his entrance that Black himself reportedly did not want at all. From there, his booking became even stranger as the weeks went on. He was placed in storylines where he sat alone in a dark room, cutting repeated promos asking other wrestlers to come and fight him for no clear reason, an odd choice for a character who had once been defined by mystery rather than repetition. Instead of wrestling on a regular basis, he spent long stretches of time away from real in-ring competition, which slowly cost him valuable momentum with the audience. After a long absence from television, WWE built up a dramatic return for Black, using a series of creative animated video packages, generating real excitement among fans who had been waiting patiently to see him back in action. He returned with a big surprise attack on a top star, only to be released from the company just one single week later, due to budget cuts, leaving the entire storyline unfinished for fans. He later found a fresh start under the name Malachi Black, leading a very successful group in All Elite Wrestling, before eventually exploring a return to WWE. What makes this story so frustrating is how much thought clearly went into Black's original character. Every entrance, every piece of gear, every detailed vignette was carefully built to create a specific mood. When that vision was replaced with something as simple as a creaking door sound effect and a dark closet, it did not just change the character. It replaced years of careful planning with a shortcut that never truly fit who Aleister Black actually was as a performer. The gap between the atmospheric, thoughtful character fans had followed in NXT and the simplified vampire storyline he was given on the main roster remains one of the clearest examples of a creative vision getting lost somewhere between two very different parts of the same company. Number 4 on our list is Goldberg. In WCW, Goldberg was one of the biggest attractions the wrestling business had ever seen at that time, with a winning streak so long that fans genuinely tracked the number every single week. His matches were short, intense, and explosive, which protected his limitations and made every single win feel incredibly powerful to the crowd, driving huge television ratings and pay-per-view sales along the way. When he arrived in WWE in 2003, the company tried to turn him into a normal, long-form wrestler instead of sticking with the winning formula that had made him famous. He was placed into long, slow matches that did not suit his style at all, starting with a match against Christian that ended in a disqualification and drew loud boos from the disappointed crowd, a far cry from the short and decisive victories that had made him a phenomenon in the first place. Things got even stranger from there as the weeks continued. In one backstage segment, Goldberg was made to wear a long blonde wig, a choice that seemed almost designed to mock the intense and serious character that had made him famous in the first place. This entire run was reportedly seen backstage as a way of testing whether Goldberg would accept being humbled after arriving as a big outside star from another company, an approach that put ego and internal politics ahead of the storytelling fans were actually watching every week. Tension built up over the following months between Goldberg and the rest of the roster, as backstage frustration grew on both sides of an increasingly uncomfortable working relationship. After losing to Triple H at a pay-per-view event, Goldberg reportedly had a heated and emotional confrontation backstage and was suspended by the company the very next day. A senior WWE producer named Bruce Pritchard later admitted he took much of the internal blame for how this entire run was handled behind the scenes, a rare public acknowledgement of how badly the creative plan had missed the mark. It took away much of the mystery and aura that had once made Goldberg feel completely unstoppable, even though his talent and drawing power were never really in question at any point. A performer who had once been booked so carefully that fans genuinely believed he could not be beaten was suddenly placed in situations designed to make him look ordinary, even a little silly. That kind of shift does not just hurt one storyline, it can quietly damage the trust an audience has built up in a performer over years, and that trust is often much harder to rebuild than it was to break in the first place. Goldberg's entire appeal in WCW had been built around the idea that he simply could not lose, and once WWE started chipping away at that idea through slower matches and comedy segments, the special feeling that once surrounded him took years to fully return, even after the mistakes of that first run were eventually acknowledged. Number 3 on our list is Shinsuke Nakamura. Nakamura arrived in WWE already famous around the entire world for his rock star presence and his hard-hitting striking style, known to fans as strong style, having already headlined major shows across multiple continents before WWE even signed him. In NXT, he was an instant hit with the fans and felt like a true main event level talent from the very first night. After winning the Royal Rumble match in 2018, he earned a dream match at WrestleMania for the biggest title in the company, a moment that felt like the true beginning of a long-awaited main event run. His main roster trajectory shifted permanently following his defeat at that event, closing the door on what many fans had hoped would be a long and dominant championship reign. Instead of leaning into his elite fighting skills and unique background, WWE gave him a repeated, mocking catchphrase about not being able to speak English, which he used to avoid doing real promos or facing serious challengers on the microphone, a strange choice for a performer who had already proven he could carry a promo in more than one language. While Nakamura performed the role with a lot of charm and energy, it reportedly limited what fans could see of his true personality and cut off much of his natural ability to connect through words during backstage interviews with reporters like Renee Young. Reports say this creative decision came from a lack of understanding about Nakamura himself as a performer, since one top star revealed that Vince McMahon apparently did not even know Nakamura could speak fluent English, months after his debut had already happened. Over time, his in-ring style was also toned down for television, and he was placed into a smaller group act alongside other underused stars, rather than treated as the special attraction he had once seemed destined to become, a quiet demotion that many fans noticed happening in real time. A wrestler who had once felt like a can't-miss future main event star became a steady, reliable act several steps below where fans had first expected him to land. It is worth remembering that Nakamura had already proven himself on stages all around the world before he ever set foot in a WWE ring. He did not need a gimmick built around not speaking clearly to get attention. He already had genuine star power, built over many years of hard work on the road. Reducing him to a simple stereotype instead of building on his real global fame remains one of the clearer examples on this entire list of talent, being narrowed down instead of expanded. Nakamura had spent years earning respect on some of the biggest stages in the world before he ever arrived in NXT, and fans who followed his career closely could see immediately how much of his real personality was being left out of his WWE presentation once the catchphrase took over his character. Number 2 on our list is Rusev, who is also known to fans as Miro. In late 2017 and into 2018, Rusev built one of the most naturally popular characters WWE had seen in years, a feat that becomes even more impressive when you remember he was originally introduced to fans as a serious, dominant heel rather than a fan favorite. Alongside his tag partner Aiden English, he created a catchphrase and a feel-good movement that fans simply could not stop chanting, even during matches that had absolutely nothing to do with him at all. His merchandise reportedly became one of the best-selling items in the entire company during this period, a clear sign to any observer that fans had truly embraced this new version of the character. Despite this clear and organic connection with the fans, his push toward the main event was reportedly held back again and again by the creative team, and the crowd's obvious excitement was largely ignored on screen, even as the chants continued night after night in arena after arena. By late 2019, his character took a painful and personal turn. He was placed into an emotional storyline where his real-life wife appeared to be unfaithful to him with another wrestler, forcing him through humiliating scenes on live television in front of millions of people, a jarring shift for a performer who had just spent an entire year as one of the most beloved characters on the entire roster. Rusev has said this storyline was originally pitched to him as building toward a major WrestleMania showdown that never actually happened in the end, leaving the emotional payoff of the entire angle feeling incomplete for the fans who had followed it closely. Even after Rusev worked hard to improve his acting skills for these difficult scenes, and was reportedly praised backstage for his performance, the storyline still damaged the strong, powerful image that had made him popular with fans in the first place. Reports say that even after he transformed his body into peak physical condition, he was still kept in a villain role rather than allowed to turn back into the beloved babyface that fans clearly wanted him to be. He was released from the company in 2020, found new success elsewhere as a champion in a rival promotion, holding a major title there for a long and celebrated reign, and eventually returned to WWE years later, older, wiser, and more respected than ever. Rusev Day was not a small moment. It was one of those rare instances where a crowd decides completely on its own who they want to cheer, no matter what role that performer has been given on paper. Watching that kind of organic joy get pushed aside, and then watching it replaced with a painful personal storyline, remains one of the more difficult moments for fans to look back on from this entire era. The gap between what fans clearly wanted to see and what the company actually delivered could not have been more obvious, and it stands as one of the clearest cases on this list, of a company hearing its own audience loud and clear and choosing a different direction anyway. Number 1 on our list, the most heartbreaking case of all, is Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt was one of the most imaginative and creative minds professional wrestling has ever seen in its long history, someone who treated his characters more like living stories than simple wrestling gimmicks. In 2019, he created a terrifying character called the Fiend, paired with a strange and unsettling children's show-style segment called the Firefly Funhouse. This character was an instant sensation with fans, and became one of the top-selling acts in the entire company, eventually capturing the very top title in WWE, and drawing huge attention from fans who had never seen anything quite like it before. But behind the scenes, the deeper meaning of the character was reportedly often misunderstood by the people above him. A former WWE writer who helped build the original idea has said that Wyatt and his team saw the Fiend as a way of representing inner trauma and pain, while reports say Vince McMahon instead wanted to treat him as a simple, unstoppable supernatural monster with no deeper story, a gap in vision that never fully closed during the character's run. This difference in vision reportedly caused real and lasting frustration for Wyatt over time, since he had built the character around a much deeper emotional idea than the one that eventually made it to television. At a pay-per-view called Hell in a Cell in 2019, The Fiend faced Seth Rollins in a match with absolutely no rules at all. The planned ending was reportedly changed at the very last moment to a referee stoppage, after a sledgehammer shot, and the crowd reacted with real anger and boos, rather than the excitement everyone had expected, even chanting the name of a rival wrestling company in protest. Reports say Seth Rollins was furious after the match ended and had to be physically held back backstage by other staff members. The character's aura took another serious hit later on, when Goldberg, in his 50s at the time, defeated The Fiend cleanly for the top title in the company, a result that many fans felt undid months of careful storytelling in a single moment. Wyatt was reportedly open about his unhappiness with these creative choices being made around him, and he was released from the company in July 2021. He returned in 2022, under new leadership, finally given the chance to explore his own ideas more freely than before. Sadly, Bray Wyatt passed away before he could fully show the world everything he still had left to give as a performer and a storyteller. His story stands as a powerful reminder of just how much creative talent can be lost when a company does not fully understand the person behind the character they helped create. The Fiend was never just a costume or a gimmick. It was the product of a genuinely original mind, built with layers of meaning that fans spent months trying to decode and enjoy together. When those layers were flattened into a simple monster story, something real was lost, not just for Wyatt, but for every fan who had connected with the deeper ideas he was trying to share. His passing makes this final entry on the list feel especially heavy, and it is a reminder to always appreciate original creative voices in wrestling, while they are still here to share their vision with us. Bray Wyatt spent years building worlds inside the wrestling ring that no one else in the business had ever attempted, mixing horror, family trauma, and dark humor into something that felt completely his own. Losing the chance to see where that vision could have gone, especially after he was finally given more creative freedom near the end, is something many fans still find difficult to accept. Looking back at all 10 of these stories, one thing becomes very clear to anyone who loves this business. Talent alone was never the real problem for any of these wrestlers, not even for a single one of them. Every performer on this list had the skill, the charisma, and the genuine, honest fan support needed to become a true legend in the wrestling world. What often stood in their way instead were decisions made at the very top of the company. Decisions that did not always trust the fans in the crowd or the performers standing in the ring. This pattern was not really a string of small mistakes happening by accident. It reportedly came from a business model that valued the WWE brand itself above any single performer, no matter how popular that performer became with fans. Whenever a wrestler grew too big on their own, without the company controlling every part of the process, reports suggest that leadership grew cautious and moved to rein that popularity back in. Many talented stars who felt frustrated under this system eventually looked elsewhere, and that frustration reportedly helped fuel the rise of other wrestling companies, most notably All Elite Wrestling, as fans followed their favorite performers to these new stages. The good news is that wrestling never truly forgets its stars, no matter how long they have been away. Many of the performers on this list found new life outside WWE, and some even found their way back home again on their own terms, wiser and stronger than before. Their journeys prove that real talent always finds a way to shine through in the end, no matter what obstacles are placed in front of it along the way. Since creative control of WWE shifted toward Paul Levesque, the internal culture has reportedly changed a great deal from the years covered in this video. The modern product has increasingly focused on long-term storytelling and on respecting the history that performers bring with them, rather than tearing that history down the moment they arrive on the main roster. Fans have noticed this shift, and many former NXT stars have finally been given the kind of patient, thoughtful booking that so many of the wrestlers on this list were denied during the years we just talked about. That change does not erase what happened before, but it does offer a hopeful sign for the wrestlers still building their names inside the company today. It is worth remembering that every single wrestler on this list chose to keep working, keep training, and keep believing in their own ability, even after being told in one way or another that they did not fit the mold the company wanted. That kind of resilience deserves just as much recognition as their talent in the ring. Wrestling fans are often the ones who remember these stories the longest. long after a storyline has ended and a new season of television has begun. Every time a fan brings up Rusev Day, or the Cesaro section, or the mystery of the Fiend, they are keeping a piece of these performers alive in a way that no creative decision from years ago can ever fully take away. That is really the heart of this whole story. Wrestling belongs to the fans just as much as it belongs to any single company, and no matter how a wrestler's WWE run ends, the connection built with an audience during the good moments tends to last far longer than any single bad decision made behind the curtain, and that connection is really the whole point. If you enjoyed this look back at wrestling history, let us know in the comments which of these 10 stories surprised you the most, and make sure you are subscribed for more deep dives into the wrestling business right here on this channel.